We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Time. We are live on Rumble. Rumble.com/AmRadPod is where you can always find us on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Remember to smash the thumbs up, follow the channel. If you want to subscribe on Rumble, that goes directly to us. We appreciate it. Definitely subscribe to the audio format on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, so you can get the shows when we drop them. Give us a 5-star rating. Help us to trick the algorithm into radicalizing more Americans. And if you're one of the viewers over at X America News, thanks for coming aboard with a new experiment here. Saturday grab bag edition. I just have a whole bunch of stuff we just haven't gotten around to because there's just so much that's been happening to. We're going to be reacting to a few of the executive orders that have come out, a couple of pardons as well, some pro-life matters, and health issues, particularly the Girl Scouts, which I found very upsetting because Girl Scout cookies were just a staple of my household growing up. It just seems like the older you get, the more you just can't have good things anymore. But we do have lots of good things today to bring you just because it's so much in volume. And I know Saturday's fun because we are not really constrained by time. But I felt when I was looking around at my list of things to get to today, a little bit like this video. So before getting to Garrett, we're going to have a palate cleanse to get ready for the show. This is what it looks like when they tell you that there are just 5 minutes left at the firing range and you have so many stories to get to. That's the kind of day we're going to have today on a Saturday here, guys. So I got Garrett all hyped up. I know he wants to come on and give his 2 cents on that one.
It's absolutely fantastic. I love to see the Predator anytime. In all seriousness, though, that is indeed what it looks like when the range day is ending or the range is closing. I especially think back to my Army days, which oddly enough I've been revisiting a lot lately, but mentally, not through time. As you mentioned, we don't have the constraints of time, but yet we cannot time travel other than in our own brains. But I remember many range days. Hey, we got to get through all this ammo. So if you guys want to leave, and it's like, all right, just let her rip.
Just let her rip, blasting out every single target. It is a strange thing where it's like, yeah, we'll do marksmanship for 98% of the day. But the last few, we're just going to pretend we're in an 80s action movie. All right. I want to get to this first one because I know that you and I share a sentiment about Russ Albrecht, the founder of Silk Road, and he got a pardon. This is one of the promises made, promises kept and delivered by Donald Trump here. This guy has been rotting in a prison cell for a long time with multiple life sentences for things that are normally not life sentenceable on. So reporting that I picked was from The Hill. Trump pardons Silk Road founder Russ Albrecht. If you're unfamiliar, Silk Road was basically like the Amazon of the dark web. And people happened to be on it who were buying drugs and weapons and poisons and all this sort of thing. And the speculation is that because people were using that tool for things that were ill, then we need to send a message against Russ Albrecht, who ran it. And they also wanted to besmirch Bitcoin, which people were using in its infancy as a medium of exchange. And he really, as a result of that, got the Martha Stewart treatment. So, quote, the scum that worked to convict him were some of the same lunatics who were involved in the modern day weaponization of government against me. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ridiculous, unquote. Trump posted on Truth Social. He made it about himself.
Of course,
but
he must.
Regardless, I'm grateful that Russ Albrecht is going to walk free. I've read a couple books about it. I think they tried to spin up that there might have been communications where he was ordering a hit on someone. They said, well, we can't prove that, but we're going to enhance the sentence on you because of that. But I really think that it was just the Martha Stewart treatment, that you cannot operate this website because the tool can be used for things that we don't approve of. You got to go to prison for the rest of your life.
Yep. As far as Ross Ulbricht goes, I remember hearing about this. It's weird thinking about this again because this was over a decade ago. I mean, this was early 2010s, I think. And today, when you hear about, well, if you look into it a little bit and you hear about Russ Albrecht, you come to the conclusion, or I think most rational people would come to the conclusion that, oh, this guy's just kind of an extreme libertarian type of guy. And he was good with computers and he was relatively smart. And he just wanted an actual free exchange of ideas and market. And he helped create that. And yes, we could argue about some of the moral standards of some of the things that he allowed people to do through the Silk Road. And this is the first time I ever heard of Tor, the onion router or whatever, and the dark web and all of this. Back in 2010, 2011, whenever Dread Pirate Roberts or whatever his handle was, first started hitting the news. And I remember I must have just been drinking all of the normie Kool-Aid back then, because I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this guy sounds so evil. And good job, Department of Justice, for bringing him to justice. And then, like with Edward Snowden, like with Donald Trump, I could think of probably a dozen, if you gave me a minute, of examples where once I learned a little bit more and started using my own brain and started using my own mental acumen to come to a determination, it ends up being the opposite of what we are told. And this is another example of that. And I, I wanted to pop this up, but if you have something to toss in there, by all means.
I think there's a sort of a Barbara Streisand effect that happened with Russ Ulbricht to people that wanted to pay attention to it. Certainly more than typically would have. Like if you describe yourself as one of the norms who are just imbibing the legacy media at the time, it opened your eyes to aspects like cryptocurrency
That's
and
another one. Yep. The first time I ever heard of Bitcoin was through that.
people got radicalized, if you will, and then also became aware of weaponization that can happen. And it's been going on for a long time. And I remember reading about this, a couple different books, and there were elements of his investigation where there were corruptions that were going on within the federal government that were exposed that just we're just not going to talk about it. Like the task force that was brought in to investigate involved a DEA agent who stole like millions of dollars of Bitcoin.
Right.
They just
Right.
tracked it down. He's got it somewhere hidden. He stole evidence off of the case.
Yeah.
Where
So
the FBI is claiming credit for this, and meanwhile, it's an IRS agent who found him.
of course, of course, all of the standard corruption elements come into play here. And for those reasons alone, the case should have been tossed out. I think we've touched on the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine here before, but when law enforcement officers engage in that type of behavior, you don't still get the win at the end of the day.
Let's just theoretically, let's say that you brought a drug case to a jury, and during the trial, it came out that you were taking bricks of cocaine on the case. Do you think that that might change the jury's opinion of the investigators a little bit?
100%, as it should. In a rational world, that would then become the crux of whatever the court is hearing, is how corrupt me as a law enforcement agent is, taking bricks of cocaine and snorting it and selling it myself, or whatever a corrupt law enforcement officer would be doing. And I saw, I didn't know this back then, but I saw, and I think it's part of this theft that you're talking about, 173,000 Bitcoins, which is worth like $18 billion today.
It's nuts because it was when Bitcoin was not worth anything
Yes.
that he stole it.
I think I've said before too, the first time I heard of Bitcoin, it was like $300 a coin. And I think it stemmed from this case. Is the first time I heard of it, I was like, what the heck is a Bitcoin? And then I tried to learn about it, and guess what, everybody? I'm not that smart. I still don't understand Bitcoin. But also, and I got this, I did find it. This should have been an example to us of the DEI death cult, but it was so long ago and it was so early on that we just weren't ready for it, or we weren't aware, or we weren't looking, or we trusted the narrative like I did. to be true, but this is a screenshot of what the judge was saying. This is directly from the court papers, and I'll just read it for those who are listening. There appears to be in some of these articles that were presented to the court some view that there is a moral ambiguity about some of the drug distribution. There is no moral ambiguity about it. It was just wrong. And that is what our democratic process had said. And there is a way to change the law, but it is not by doing what occurred. No drug dealer from the Bronx selling meth or heroin or crack has ever made these kinds of arguments to the court. And here it is, folks, the kicker. It is a privileged argument. It is an argument from one of privilege. So Ross Ulbricht was a victim of the DEI death cult in its early stages just for being a white guy.
They were basically making the case that, well, Ulbricht was making the case there was a level of civil disobedience that he was engaging in. And that implies that he's willing to suffer the consequences for it. So it's almost an admission of guilt as it was. But the point you're making there is the DEI led to an enhanced sentence, likely from the judge, who just took umbrage with the fact that he wasn't willing to just take the time. And he's a white guy. I got a chance. He's a white educated guy who I don't even know if he went to college. I think he's one of these just really smart guys that was too smart for school.
I think he went. I don't know if he finished.
Yeah, like they all do, right?
Yeah.
They look around, they're like, this is a bad use of my time.
Uh-huh.
I should go on to tour and make
Yes.
173,000 Bitcoin by next week.
Uh-huh.
Right. All right. How about some executive orders that are, some are good and some have already, they're stopping them because they being the system that Donald Trump is trying to disrupt. But first, the good. Let's go to the Wall Street Journal, where we're going to be halting gain of function research.
Bravo.
Which sounds good. And then the Wall Street Journal, because it is a leftist rag who is hiding itself to be a right of center outlet, gives away its own sort of agenda. The goal of the order would be to stop scientists with U.S. funding from conducting gain of function research on viruses that could endanger human health. So you should not be provoking viruses to jump from beast to man so that you can develop an experimental vaccine. But many scientists and public health officials have said there isn't any public evidence that an experiment at the Wuhan lab could have created the virus that caused the pandemic. So many scientists have said it, so they're accurate in reporting that many scientists have said it, but there are many people who also said that the January 6ers murdered cops. It's accurate to report that they said it. It's not accurate to report what they said was the truth.
Yes. And that's what we should be after here is the truth. And it actually frustrates me to no end. Well, one, it all goes back to COVID. It seems, seriously, Steve, like it always does. It always goes back to COVID, at least in the suspendable verse it does. And here it is again. And we had the FBI. We had Christopher Wray, who I endearingly have been calling Chrissy Wray lately, and I quite enjoy that. But so Chrissy Wray, we had the DOE, we've had other elements of the government coming out and saying that the most likely origination of it was the level 4 lab in Wuhan, China, not the bat soup in the wet market. Which, of course, anybody with a brain, again, just pull the thread a little bit. Narrative is it's coming from a wet market. Okay, what's a wet market? And then you learn how gross that is. And you think, okay, yeah, maybe that's possible that a bat flew 3,000 miles and landed in somebody's soup. And now we got a new vaccine. Oh, wait a second. Half a block away, there's a level 4 biolab, and China doesn't have the restrictions on those type of things as like we do. And they've had things leaking from that lab before. Maybe it came from there. Oh, and if you say that out loud, you are called a conspiracy theorist. And if you put it on the internet, you get it taken down immediately. So maybe that's the truth.
And a biological weapons expert running that lab. Just saying. All right, let's go to the Paris Climate Agreement. Which Obama's gonna get us in. Trump's gonna get us out. Biden's gonna get us in. Trump's gonna get us out.
And then Obama's gonna date Jennifer Aniston.
It's the agreements are ludicrous. They're these people who worship Gaia and say that the sun monster is angry at us because we drive SUVs and we exhale carbon dioxide. They've effectively used the language to change carbon dioxide to carbon and saying carbon is polluting the atmosphere. So just you being alive is hurting the earth. It's interested in preserving the earth for the earth, not preserving the earth for man to have dominion over.
Yes. Amen, Steve.
And I saw this from Kurt Schlichter, though, because, I haven't read the Paris Climate Agreements. Full transparency here. I don't care.
No.
As long as it's not impacting my energy needs here. I think they're
Yes.
going up for various reasons. Maybe Paris, maybe not. Until I saw the Kurt Schlichter image that got put up, and I'm like, oh, it's definitely not impacting anything at all. So this is a map of the world. It shows the nations that have ratified, signed, and withdrawn the actual Paris
We're
Agreement.
the only ones who've withdrawn?
We're the only nation that has withdrawn, for those watching.
Kind of
The
surprised by that.
rest of the earth, with the exception of 3 countries, has ratified it, but only 3 have signed it.
Okay, so everybody's withdrawn, essentially.
Everybody's just kind of letting it sit idle.
Yeah.
The 3 countries that have signed it are leading the way are Libya, Yemen,
The Libyans.
and Iran.
Okay, please help me understand why those countries are the ones who've signed it. Is it because they literally give 0 Fs?
Maybe they're just trying to pull the energy usage or energy avenues away from other countries so they can just make it all come back to them for oil when eventually it fails. That's what I was thinking. I mean, like, hey, yeah, you guys definitely do the solar panels, all for the wind farms, get those turbines up. Oh, wait, it didn't work. Come back to the black gold that we got here. I mean, they actually might be being a little bit savvy, but I think the rest of the world just wanted to do the virtue signal and say that, yes, in fact, we're all about Mother Earth. But really, when it comes down to it, we all want to have cheap energy to heat our homes and cook our food and run our Silk Roads. So
I wonder how many countries now will say, all right, USA, lead the way, because that's just how it goes sometimes in life. Even on a human level, all you need is one. You got one guy who stands up and says, here am I. Or in this case, an entire country says, you know what? F that. We're out. Y'all are stupid. We should have never signed. We should have never agreed to this in the first place. We're out. And you open the door. Who's going to follow, And also, it's interesting with Iran, Libya, and what was the other one?
Yemen.
Think of those countries. They've got no problem. Oh, I don't know, killing gay people for being gay. They've got no problem butchering journalists like Jamal Khashoggi. So
T-pull on that one, yeah. Yeah, that was Saudi Arabia, but yeah, same region of the world. Yeah, they're all fake. Everything about it. Every time they have these giant accords, they fly in their private jets. We can talk about the hypocrisy that's connected to that. They're eating the duck à l'orange and the arugula. Side note: that was, if you want any more proof that Barack Obama was a pedantic jackass, when asked a very simple question, like politician ground ball question, right? Candidate Obama, what's your favorite vegetable? He was asked that. I hope it was by a child, but you never know. It could have been CNN. And he responded, arugula. Can't be my president.
No.
Can't be my. I need the guy that says, potatoes are a vegetable. I like French fries and vodka. So good and bad. So we like the executive order here, but we're going to do the same thing all over again, where one judge in one district says, nope, you can't do it. And that's with the birthright citizenship. So local reporting from the Seattle Times about the executive order pertaining to birthright citizenship. A federal judge in Seattle blocked temporarily President Trump's attempt to rescind birthright citizenship. This district judge's name is John Kohanoor, Judge John the Jerk, says, quote, I've been on the bench for over 4 decades. All right, that's a problem.
Yeah, you should retire, my man.
I can't remember another case where the question presented is as clear as this one. This is a blatantly unconstitutional order. There are other times in world history where we look back and people of goodwill can say, where were the judges? Where were the lawyers? Man, this guy is all about his legacy.
Yes.
And so he interrupted the DOJ attorney before he finished his first sentence in the arguments.
Oh, goodness.
And he interrupts and says, In your opinion, is this executive order constitutional? A DOJ attorney responds, it absolutely is.
Really?
And the judge responds, frankly, I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar could state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order. It
Okay.
just boggles my mind. He's a fair and impartial jurist.
Yeah, sure. Okay, this actually I thought I was going to kind of gloss over this one, but I got a lot swirling in my head now. One, Ninth Circuit, which is incredibly liberal. Two, the 40 years guy, go enjoy Mount Rainier, would you? I mean, if you have a family, but Ninth Circuit living in Washington State, 40 years on the bench, probably a homo. So maybe he doesn't have a family. I'm just totally throwing shade at him because why not? Because he's throwing shade. So I guess that doesn't make it right. Two wrongs don't make it right. We all know this, but he's basically degrading the DOJ attorney, which if you want, and we've heard it for the last 4 years, I'm just doing my job. That's been good enough for the DOJ in the last 4+ years. Is I'm just doing my job. I do find it surprising that the administration was already able to find a DOJ employee, an attorney no less, who does think that this is constitutional, because I would have imagined that 99% of DOJ attorneys are swamp creatures who drink the same Kool-Aid as this judge. And I would have expected the DOJ attorney to say something like, I am just doing my job. But no, he or she says, when they finally got the chance to speak, I do think it's constitutional. I, I don't guess know the arguments well enough, but the next piece of it is I'm fine with this. I'm fine with you taking it to court. That's part of the system we have. And I guess what comes to mind is the vaccine mandate for me. It always goes back to COVID. We took it to court. Me and Kyle were on that lawsuit with the Feds for Medical Freedom and hundreds of others of federal employees, and they got it filed in a federal circuit that we thought would be favorable, Fifth Circuit. It ended up being favorable. They put a stay on it. That's how these things go when a president signs an executive order that may be unconstitutional. I would like this executive order to go through because I think it would be better for our nation, but it's worth having the argument.
The judge sitting up there and putting the government attorney, who's the advocate for the government's position, right? His personal agenda. You would hope
Doesn't
that
matter, right?
a communist government attorney would never do this, but regardless of your personal ideology, you are advocating on behalf of the government. You have to be a zealous advocate. That's your client in that
Yep.
case. And the judge asks for his personal opinion. It's no different than a defense attorney standing up and the judge saying, before we begin with presenting your case, do you really truly believe your client is not guilty of these offenses? I
Yeah.
absolutely do. I don't see how anyone could come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? What about the process we're supposed to have here? And I've been to trial enough times that there's it's gross. I mean, it's obnoxious amount of decorum. Like the fact that they're in there and they're just regular people, but the way they speak to each other is very contrived, and they try to be very so much dignity and yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and your honor, this and that, and this is just doesn't matter
I,
because this judge is an activist,
yes. Yeah.
and I is suboptimal. I don't want to be here. I concur with your assessment that we should have a process. It should be in court. We should hear these things out. But I'm getting more and more to the Andrew Jackson way of thinking of, okay, great ruling. Let me see you enforce it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it anyways. I think in a way we are at that point, which is I don't like. I don't like that. It's a dangerous road to continue going down. But I would say we, the royal we, aren't the ones who have paved that road. That
They
road
broke the
has
social compact. That judge there has to reap what he's sown at this
mhm,
point.
the
I
road
don't.
has been paved. And
Uh,
you mentioned him as an activist, and that's a great point to bring in because we're seeing it now. We're already seeing it in just a few days of a new presidency. The activism. You got an activist fake bishop, that woman who spoke at that, who did the homily at that
have we
service.
had a firing yet of the staffer that
Dude,
allowed that through?
no kidding.
That was at the National
Uh,
Cathedral in the front door.
Yes, talk about activism. And part of me, hey, call it prideful. I'll be the first to say, if I struggle with something, it's pride, and which, well, that would take a long time to. That's a big thread to pull there, Steve, because people like us who have been humbled into eternity People might think, what do you mean you struggle with pride? But part of me says, hey, DJT, here I sit, and I've been reading my Bible more than ever in the last few years. Bring me in, coach. I'd give you 15 good minutes. I mean, dude, my shameless plug. There it is. Here's your pride element. Lastline.substack.com. I put out another one yesterday. I would just read that. It's more scripturally sound than what this fake bishop was spouting.
I love it. I would love to see you roll up there with a Suspendables hoodie,
Yeah.
Sherpa hoodie from the pulpit, just bringing down the fire and brimstone. That needs to happen. Let's make
Yes.
that happen.
I might have to find a hoodie that has like a giant hood, so it's more like a monk, and it'll be our Suspendables monk edition.
Gosh, I like it more of like a boxing robe where you walk in there and I'll be your hype guy behind you with
Yes,
my hands
Rocky
on your
music.
shoulders. Alright. Let's go to another communist activist who says she's a Republican. That's Lisa Murkowski,
Oh yeah. Man,
who
we're
is
firing
the
on all cylinders today, Steve. Must be
senator
must be
from
the day old coffee.
senator from Alaska who got beaten in a primary at one point and then ran a write-in campaign to subvert the will of the people and the ranked choice voting. She personally oversaw, made sure it got in there so that she could continue to hold on to power. And I've seen clips of her. She is not smart. She, when she talks, she does the up talk
Oh,
because she can't carry a sentence forward. It's always a question. And she talked about going through the process of vetting out these different candidates for the presidential cabinet. And now she has finally come out and gives a long statement about why she just can't support Pete Hegseth. I am not going to make the audience dumber by reading any portion of it. I will, however, like scroll down so you can see just how much she had to say.
it's a lot, and
And so,
this is on Twitter.
and you have that much to say. Why are you, why, it's almost like you're not sure of yourself. You have
Mhm.
to explain it to that level. So I think it's also worth reporting on Lisa Murkowski's history. Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, she voted in 2021 under the Biden cabinet. There were 21 appointments that came forward. She voted yes for 19 of them,
Mm.
to include Lloyd Austin, who was the Secretary of Defense, came straight out of the defense industry, right? And they had to give him a waiver for that. The only one she voted against was Xavier Becerra, the Health and Human Services. Don't know why. Maybe because he was an attorney and not a doctor. But she voted or didn't vote on one of them. So 19 out of 21, the 95% she did vote on, she voted yes in the affirmative for Joe Biden's candidates for confirmation. And look, I think we're again back to the social compact being broken, or at least away from the times when the parties were close enough together that they might not agree on how to get there, but they wanted to get to the same location. Now we're at a point where one side wants to just burn the entire thing down. The other side's like, no, we can have unity. And then there's a few of us in the corner saying, no, you can't happen, can't happen. So there used to be a time when they said, hey, look, I disagree with this candidate for this position politically. But, and I believe Rand Paul even said this, I think the president's entitled to have his cabinet. And if the person meets the qualifications, then I will vote for them, even if it's not somebody I would pull the lever for a candidate for office, that type of thing. That's gone now. Now it's
Mhm.
basically whoever he puts forward, no, no, except if you're Lisa Murkowski. What's her logic? Does she have that strong of a grasp on power? Is somebody pulling her strings to a certain extent? Like, does she want a retirement gig over at Lockheed? I don't know.
Right. There's got to be some type of long-term plan here, because the way things are going now, like we just were talking about, the road that has been paved for us, you could pretty much say goodbye, Lisa, because you're getting primaried. Uh, it seems that we are at a juncture in the conservative on the conservative side of things, that if you don't do the will of the people, and right now the will of the people is do what Donald Trump wants. And I think Rand Paul makes a good point there, where he says, I think the president, either one, Democrat or Republican, is entitled to have their cabinet. By all means, I think that's fair. And then you mentioned how she voted out of the 20 that she voted for. She voted yes on 19. So What's going on here, lady? Because you claim to be a Republican, you ran as a Republican, you were elected as a Republican, and now you're going against the Republican president. So what's your plan? It's got to be something to that effect of I don't getting into the defense industry, or what. I don't really know what her background is. I spent some time in Alaska, and I gotta think that they got some better candidates up there. Somebody coming out of the woodwork to primary her, because I'm sure this is not what they want. This isn't, you know,
You had Joe Miller beat her in the primary like a couple of election cycles ago, and that's when she did the write-in. So she ran for re-election in 2022. So she'd be in cycle for 2028.
mm,
So she's got a secure position. That's
for a
the whole
while.
thing.
Yep.
But when she won in 2022, because they do the ranked choice, she won by less than 1% of the vote. She
Mm,
got 43. The candidate behind her got like 42 and a half. And that was a Republican.
mm,
That's basically what happens. The ranked choice voting, it splits the ticket so many times that she's just able to run up the middle, because she probably gets support from people who say like, hey, look, I don't like her on a bunch of stuff, but I know she's going to vote for Biden's cabinet, so
hmm
I'll put her in there.
Or
And
name recognition, even.
I think her father was a governor or something like that. I mean, just again, one of these royalty princelings that holds on to power and purports to represent Alaska, and yet probably hasn't been there in
Yeah.
a decade.
Right.
Right.
When's the last time she actually saw her constituents? And another piece on this is, as far as Pete Hegseth goes, you've seen more smears coming out about him just in the last 48 hours or so. For me, from my perspective, a boots on the ground infantry guy, he's the best type of person you could pick for this position. They talk about qualifications, and in that long screed, I read it. Uh, don't go finding it if you haven't, because it's not worth your effort. But she's talking about his qualifications and his past and his background. Oh, how's he not qualified? Per the qualifications, which are minimal, he is. And look at what Lloyd Austin did. Okay, so the guy was what, a very high ranking general officer. Then he retires and he's getting a pension and he's working in the defense industry, like you mentioned. And then they've got to give him a waiver so he can come back in. That guy's qualified. And then don't get me started on the illegal emergency use authorization only vaccine, quote unquote, that he forced onto the DOD. And what about the days where he was AWOL because he was getting surgery and nobody even knew where it was?
He was in an ICU.
But he's qualified, Steve. The guy can't pass the PT test, but he's qualified.
Well, he has to wear a mask underneath his face shield because he
Yeah.
doesn't want to get the coronavirus.
Walking
Projecting
around.
great strength abroad,
Yeah.
the powers and forces of the United States military,
Yep.
Lloyd Austin.
And again, I may be biased. You could see it. You could see it back there when I move my head. The down on the right by my ear is my CIB, Combat Infantryman's badge. Pete Hegseth has one of those too. And I'm sorry, show me a CIB and I go ahead. Then you can lead the way. And that's to me, that's all it takes. And I bet you, I think he's going to get confirmed. I think he's already got enough of the votes. I bet we're going to see a strong military once again. It might take a little bit, but I think we're going to get there again. And I wouldn't blame people for being hesitant to join still. I still wouldn't recommend it, but we're going to be on a way better footing than we were.
I think that there's almost the Brett Kavanaugh treatment that he's getting, where I didn't like Brett Kavanaugh as a choice for Supreme Court. I think he's awful, but the treatment that he got, you're like, oh well, I got to support it no matter what now
Right.
because of that. And unfortunately, Brett Kavanaugh, because he's a complete beta, and he got treated that way, didn't say, oh, you know what? I'm going to be an activist just like that Seattle judge, and I'm going to be just a zealous Clarence Thomas lackey, right? Nah, he just continued to do the DC thing. Maybe Pete Hegseth says, "Oh, you thought that looked radical?
Yeah.
Wait till you see this now."
Hold my beer.
FDA, which is expecting the Health and Human Services to be under RFK, I guess now. I think they're probably trying to beat him to the punch. So I saw that they revoked the authorization for the red dye.
Good.
Yeah. So the FDA bans red number 3. So before RFK gets in there, I guess they don't want to give him the credit. That's why I think they did it. So, quote, the FDA cannot authorize a food additive or color additive if it has been found to cause cancer in human or animals. unquote, Jim Jones, the FDA's deputy director for human food, said, quote, evidence shows cancer in laboratory male rats exposed to high levels of red number 3. The dye was banned from cosmetics in 1990, so you couldn't put it on your face 35 years ago, but you can imbibe it. It is still used in candies, drinks, and other foods. The dye is made from petroleum. So
Ew.
we just make it from oil.
Ew. Gross.
I think this is important because these agencies are trying to get out ahead. I think it's also, I saw there was a directive that came down on these health agencies from the Trump administration saying no publishing at all. No directives can come from you at all until I get my people in there. I think that there's almost a war happening within these agencies that are trying to hold on to what they can and ensconce their communists and activists within the various bureaus before you can get different sorts of leadership in there. But however it comes about, I'm always in favor of not giving kids cancer because they had too much red Gatorade.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't remember if I talked about this on the show with you or who I was talking. It might have just been a conversation with my wife. But in Europe, they use things like the juice of beets to dye things red. So they already use natural ingredients or carrots to get the hue just right, to bring in a little orange. And we're using petroleum-based additives that can give you cancer. Come on, America. Maha, make America healthy again. We should have been doing that before 2025. So I don't know why it's taken us. Well, I do know why. It's the pharmaceutical industrial complex or the Monsanto industrial complex. So much of that stuff is banned in other countries. And believe me, we could rag on the EU all day long for all sorts of things, but they're on the right path as far as food and health goes, at least in comparison to us. And I think it's just because of the money that's floating around, where that's why we haven't seen it here yet.
An acquaintance of mine who's just kind of one of these odd dudes who just knows things. I mean, like, I didn't research it. And this guy does like skateboarding during the day. He surfs, and then he's also like a very successful businessman. So I, take it for whatever it's worth. Carrots aren't supposed to be orange.
Oh,
that's the Punnett square. That's a recessive trait that we just decided that looked good, so we went that. They're actually supposed to be purple.
Okay, I've seen purple carrots before. I don't like this anymore. Make purple carrots great again.
All right. Well, you know what used to be great and explains the thumbnail today? Girl Scout cookies. and look, before I get to the story about Girl Scout cookies potentially giving you cancer or whatever they're giving you, you and I are a similar age demographic. I imagine that you remember fondly the days where it was like a 2 weeks to a 1 month time where all the Girl Scouts were selling the cookies and we had to stock up on as much as we could because it was a once a year thing. And then they're getting sold every time you're walking out of a Walmart now. And that's if you're not buying them off the shelves in the Walmart where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes me think, why do we have Girl Scouts? Is this just some sort of like cookie making scheme that they have? Do they do anything else other than hawk cookies in your face?
I don't think so. It seems like whenever they are meeting or whatever, they're preparing to sell cookies. So
Right?
I'm not exactly sure what
I
else
think
to
that
do.
scouts learn to like tie knots and whittle at least, right? When they're not
Yes.
dealing with trannies as scout leaders. But I never knew what Girl Scouts did outside of selling cookies. And then more importantly, the most important, what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Oh man, this is tough. So probably peppermint patty, or what's it called? Not peppermint patty. It's
Thin Mint.
Thin Mint. Thin Mint.
All right.
I really
That's
like
my
the
brother
Thin
from another mother right there. Thin Mints out of the freezer. Got to go with it.
Oh, yes, the Thin Mint out of the freezer is the best. But these things are going to kill us, aren't they?
They are, according to Highwire. Study finds that Girl Scout cookies are toxic.
Of course they
Dang
are.
it.
Dang. No more girls.
Now this is where the scheme comes in, Garrett. Raking in $800 million a year,
Holy
Girl Scout
cats.
cookies are intentionally formulated with genetically modified ingredients.
Oh no,
And
GMO.
100% of the 13 types of the 25 cookies test positive for both cancer-causing glyphosate and toxic metals. And
Oh,
Thin Mints had the highest levels of poison
no.
glyphosate.
Oh no. No wonder. No wonder I feel like I'm dying, Steve.
Oh,
Help! Help! I
this
got too much aluminum from my cookies.
this is up there with ending birthright citizenship for me as a cause.
You know, this is how they get that mint flavor just right. They just add some toxic metal to your cookie.
Yes. Hey, peppermint patty, throw in some cancer. The people want more. But the good thing is about the money gets reported in the Highwire is that they have the funds to actually make the changes, like the food dyes and all that, right? So
Okay.
Girl Scouts appear capable of implementing significant changes with reported revenue of $112 million
Wow.
in 2020 and $800 million in annual cookie enterprise selling over. They sell 200 million boxes a year.
Oh, goodness. Goodness. No wonder we have an obesity epidemic.
Just it's the Girl Scout cookies. That's why. Man.
That's a lot of cookies.
Oh, all right. Transition. This is a grab bag episode, man. I'm just
I
pulling
love
them
it.
from all
I've been
over.
loving it. I gotta say.
Full auto in the jungle from the hip. Schwarzenegger and
Lobbing
Jesse the
some 40
body.
Mike grenades while you're at it.
Well, that's. I mean, you're too happy. I got to bring you down more than
This is
the,
true.
the Girl Scout cookies. So you're a man of faith, a God fearing man, as are 5 doctors in South Carolina.
Uh-oh.
Because they're suing South Carolina because they say the pro-life law violates their religious freedom.
Really? What religion are you, fellas?
Satanists.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So a group of physicians, it's all 5 women, naturally
Oh,
the worst people on earth, Karens from the
yep.
suburbs. A group of physicians is suing the state of South Carolina in an effort to challenge the state's laws protecting preborn children from abortion. They claim the current exemptions in the law, which allow abortions to be committed due to health or fatal fetal anomalies, are too vague and violate religious freedom. So
Really?
the actual law protects preborn children from abortions after detectable heartbeat. It's a heartbeat bill, and it contains some exceptions, including life, health of the mother. It also allows abortions in cases of medical emergencies, such as a fatal fetal diagnosis, causes of rape and incest up to 12 weeks. So the press release from this group of the 5 women who say that it violates their religious practices, who basically puts their souls in jeopardy to not be able to murder babies. They're called the Lawyering Project.
Hmm.
It says these exceptions routinely force doctors to, quote, withhold abortion care from very ill or grieving patients, eviscerates physicians' religious and conscientious beliefs in honoring, and I get this, ready? The inherent worth of every person,
Okay.
helping people in critical need and placing others before themselves. You can't murder a baby. If you murder a baby, it shows you how much you value the human life. Don't you know that, Garrett?
Well, I didn't know that, Steve, but I, I I got to wrap my head around this because the language issue here. Here we go again. The deceptive, twisting, lying language issue is what they are using to try to deceive and twist and manipulate because as any real doctor would know, the life starts in the womb. And now you're making an argument that you want to somehow that you care about life, all life, but you don't because you're advocating for murder through your death cult. And I, I just I don't know how I, I mean, obviously, because I'm coming down from my high here, Steve, because I was having a good episode. I was having some fun here and happy. The last handful of days, I think, have been overall really good for our nation and society. But then you drop a bomb like this on me, and and I want to rage and I want to rant and go on a tirade at these people, but they have fallen. The scales are have not fallen from their eyes yet, and they actually believe, they truly believe that this is good, that this is doing no harm because they have drank all the Kool-Aid of their death cult.
I don't think they're legitimate in saying that this is a religious, conscientious
No.
belief in baby sacrifice. I think they're doing the lawyering, they're doing the wordsmithing that we were talking about with, say, the work from home executive order. it says no more remote work. And then the FBI sits back and says, well, we're not remote, we're telework. So we're not going to apply that to us. So they're manipulating things. And it shows actually an utter disregard for things that are really personal to you, like conscientious beliefs and actually having a God-fearing perspective and saying, well, I'll cloak myself in that. It's just words. It doesn't matter. It's almost like taking the Lord's name in vain. Isn't there a directive against that? I can't remember.
Indeed. And it is a lot like that, actually. It is blasphemous in that way because they're saying, oh, we'll use it because it benefits us. It's the rules for radicals at play. And it's use what you can to, I don't know the rule off the top of my head, but if you pull up the list, you're like, oh yeah, that's rules for radicals right there. And it's because you can use the system to your benefit. So you don't care about the deception. You don't care about the truth. You don't care that it's actually not your religion. And here it is. I've put it up on the screen here. I found their religion. For those just listening, it's an image of a child sacrifice to the satanic god Molech from the Old Testament. It's no different. The death cult still exists today, and these doctors, quote unquote, they're like that bishop. You got to put your quotes around their title because it. Are you a true doctor? Are you a true bishop? I'm gonna say no.
Well, as long as we're on the life topic, let's close this loop with a good one. And this is important to you and to me. We've actually talked about some of these people, and that is the fact that Trump's going to be pardoning some imprisoned pro-life activists forthwith.
Good.
So
This is a righteous move.
and this comes day ahead of the March for Life that was reported, which is going on this week. So a couple days ago, the pardons would bring immediate relief to those currently in prison, including, and these are the people I just pulled the names that we talked about: Lauren Handy, who was in prison for 57 months; Paulette Harlow, 24 months; Bevelyn Williams, 41 months; Heather Adoni. And this included women who were in poor health, who were elderly. And remember, one of them, the judge said, well, I should hope that your belief in the sanctity of life will get you through this
Right.
and you won't die in custody.
Despicable.
And Bevelyn Williams went out, and she was the one that was in New York, and they made accusations, and that they had to wind up like changing the jury's perspective on. The jury came back saying like, well, she didn't do that. And they said, well, you still have to convict her on all of it. Otherwise you can't leave. Right. So these defendants were imprisoned over protests in abortion facilities in Tennessee, Washington, D.C., and New York. The D.C. protests involved a group of pro-life protesters singing songs and praying, locking arms in front of the facility's staff entrance, and attaching themselves with ropes and chains to block doors inside the infamous Surgiclinic, and that's the late-term abortion center. So the place where they were doing illegal abortions,
quote unquote.
They were committing a FACE Act violation,
Yeah.
civil
So
disobedience.
the people breaking the law were the ones who were saying, "Hey, this is wrong." While meanwhile, illegal murder is going on inside.
And many of the defendants have already been imprisoned for over a year, and they're still waiting more. The pardons would also bring relief to 89-year-old Eva Edel, concentration camp survivor.
What a
She would
life!
be included. And I think it's also worth noting that Mike Lee from Utah has introduced a bill to repeal the FACE Act. And he also has Chip Roy in Texas doing the same thing in the House.
Good.
So that's a bill from the mid-90s.
Yep.
It got bipartisan support. It would not have passed if Republicans had not voted for it, and has been applied 92% during the Biden administration against pro-lifers, and more during the Biden administration than any other presidential administration. And
Ever.
he was in power for 4 years.
Yep. I mean, that is the weaponization of government. Just that alone is enough, or should be enough, for reasonable people to say we've gone too far. And that's not even including all of the other examples. Even just the J6, just throw them in, throw that example in. And there are countless more. And think of the FACE Act, early 90s, mid 90s, Bill Clinton, bipartisan support. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, because if you read the FACE Act, it is supposed to give equal protection under that law, under that statute, to places of worship, not just Christian churches, not just Catholic or Lutheran or Protestant or whatever, not just Orthodox, but to Islamic places of worship and Jewish. because most of the major religions in the world, or at least most of the major ones that are represented in America, they believe in some sanctity of life. And so if those places are being defaced or firebombed, they're supposed to get face act protection. And we've talked about it before. A couple years ago, Merrick Garland testified, oh, well, those happen under cover of darkness. So it's a little more difficult for us to investigate those. And then Steve hits us with the numbers, 92% against people of faith who are singing hymns, relatively peacefully protesting, or throwing a guy like Mark Hawk. They used the FACE Act against him after. I mean, this is the weaponization of government. They used the FACE Act to get him after the city of Baltimore said, there's nothing here. There's no there. And then the DOJ sweeps in and says, oh, yeah, let's pull the ace out of our sleeve, the FACE Act. It does. It has to go. Because how do you, at this point, how do you continue to say this is a good law?
They charged and successfully convicted Paul Vaughn in Tennessee, who was never in the proximity or inside the abortion clinic. He stood on the outside, and then when the officers came up, he asked them what they were going to do, and they said that was impeding because it delayed the officers. So hopefully, he wound up getting a no sentence. Hopefully, though, he still gets a pardon because it's pretty gross. Let's go to some parents' rights, because Supreme Court is going to be taking up one that I think is probably worth them doing. And we'll see. Hopefully they have the courage of their convictions. This comes from Catholic Vote, and it is about SCOTUS to hear cases on parents' rights to opt their children out of inappropriate book readings at school, which apparently you don't have a right to do in, I believe it's Maryland. So
which even that, I thought we lived in America, where I remember when we started attending government school, my parents were like, y'all are not going to sex ed. And it's like, oh, all right.
So
and
this is
they opted us out.
Definitely a Maryland case. The contended selection of books introduced in 2022 for pre-K through 5th grade.
Good grief.
Champion controversial ideology around gender and sexuality. One book encouraged 3- and 4-year-olds to look for images in the book based on a word bank that listed words such as intersex flag, drag queen, underwear, leather, and the name of a celebrated LGBTQ activist and sex worker for 4-year-olds. You can't opt out of this, though. It's our religion.
Yep. That's it. It's their religion. It's the religion of government. It literally is the modern day Molech. And it's a grab bag itself. Like our show today, their religion is a grab bag because it's all of the woke doctrine. It's infanticide. It's LGBTQ, every other letter added in. It's government, give government more power, more control, more money. It's the law is malleable, and what's right for me is what I'm going to do, and what's right for you, you go on and do it, unless it's what we disagree with in our religion over here. If it's our grab bag government is God religion, and you go against that, well, now that you can't do. And look at this, man. What is the purpose of this in Maryland, starting in 5K or all the way through 5th grade? It's to get them when they're young. It's to indoctrinate them when they are young.
The confusion. That's really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's no truth. Everything's relative. No, there's actually some hard and fast truths there. There's always a discussion of, well, that's your truth. That's my truth. You know why my truth always wins? Because it's objectively true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't dispute it, and you can't dispute it at all. And the one of the best commentaries that I've ever heard on language, when you think about it, it kind of makes you do a double take. If you've ever read any of the Greek mythology from Homer, they always open up with "Sing in me, muse." A muse being like, I'm going to create thoughts in my mind. So with that in mind, what's the difference between something that's moral and amoral? Amoral is the exact opposite of moral, right? You have something that's symmetrical and asymmetrical. Something asymmetrical is the exact opposite. So what would be the difference between muse and amuse? something that is the exact opposite of being able to think.
Mm.
And that's what school's doing right now, is just confusing education. It's a education, if you
Mhm.
will, on this one. I got 2 videos actually today. I got a palate cleanse-ish, but it's topical. So let's do that one and then get your thoughts, and then I just have a throwaway one to send us on a Saturday. And this one comes from the Prime Minister, uh, perhaps the incoming Prime Minister of Canada. Is it the Apple guy? His name's Pierre Poilievre, or just Pierre.
Olive. I
He's
like this
got
guy.
an eminently punchable face if you are anyone who is to the left at all. But I do like and appreciate his mannerisms and his dealings with the media, who tried to put him on blast because of Donald Trump, who's the president of a completely different country. Just shows how the Trump derangement syndrome even goes north to the snow Eskimos.
First day on the job, President Trump signed an executive order, the U.S. government only recognizing 2 genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man. I am as
Okay.
people say, cis man.
Good.
There are people there who, they say they're
Me too.
gender
I'm a man.
neutral.
Well,
You are a man. Yes. There are people there who say they're
have something in
gender
common.
neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here? Whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only 2.
I'm only aware of 2, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then you're welcome to do that. But I'm aware of 2, and as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone.
That's it right there.
I think my favorite part beyond just the messaging is he just makes 0 effort to make the conversation comfortable for that
Yes.
person who
Yes.
deserves that. And media is based on being sort of comfortable. You want to have somebody who's competent, can put a sentence together. He didn't stumble over any words. He didn't drop any profanities. He just said no and just stares
Mhm.
straight back at him. And they have to take him seriously because he's vying to become prime minister.
Mhm. I love it. I mean, just he that guy, the quote unquote journalist or whatever, is the one who's stumbling and fumbling and I'm a cis man, as they say. No, you're
Who's
just a man.
they? That would
Yeah.
have been the better option.
Yes.
Who's
Who's they?
they?
Who is they? Can you give me a list of they? And we've talked about it a little bit today, the good, the bad, and I've heard people who claim to profess Christ, who claim to have a biblical worldview, say, "How could you vote for Donald Trump? How could you? How could he be the better choice?" Well, look at some of the things we covered today. Look at just the gender issue. Genesis 1:27 says God created them man and woman he created them. So coming back to some semblance of normalcy is even just coming back to some biblical truth that humans have known forever. But Steve mentioned chaos and how it is the agent of chaos is Satan. Number one, that is the root of why we have seen such chaos and such turmoil, is because his false religion, like we showed Molech and talked about some of these issues today, that is the purpose, is to sow chaos and to get people to not understand the truth, and to not follow the truth, to not even know what the truth is. And so today we're going to Deuteronomy, because why not? How often do we go there? And it is Deuteronomy chapter 12, and right at the end, verse 31, it says, "You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abominable thing that the Lord hates, they have done for their gods, for they even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods." I'm telling you, folks, whether it's Molech or Baal or some other false god from a couple thousand years ago, or if it's the false god of government today, it's the same false god. It has the same chaotic nature to it. It has the same disregard for truth and facts. And I think that actually has helped me in my faith, in my walk, is our background as fact finders, as police officers, as FBI agents. Your job is to find facts, not to pick what the truth is and the truth that you want so you can arrest some J6er or some abortion protester. No, it's for you to find the facts and then to determine from there what to do in accordance with the law, in accordance with proper order. And is Donald Trump perfect? No. Is Steve Friend perfect? No. Is Garrett O'Boyle? Absolutely not. But we have a return to some semblance of what is right. We've already seen it just in the last few days. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, we had a grab bag sort of episode. If you were tracking with us this week, we had palate cleanse that involved Batman and a Superman. I was thinking of like a grab bag of my kids' action figures, and what happens when you pour out their action figures that are in the bucket in a grab bag style is you get a lot of mixing of superheroes. So we're going to close out with one more superhero palate cleanse for this week. This is Superman and Batman arguing over an iPhone's usage.
I've been getting good feedback on these. Have you?
Yep.
These are so good.
Man, I am so addicted to this phone. It can do anything. Anything except survive a splash of water. Exactly. It has one weakness. It's like me, but it's a phone, and it's made out of breakable glass, which is really two weaknesses, but it's still awesome. You should get one. I don't need that phone. Everyone knows I have my sweet bat phone that can do anything your phone can do, except mine looks like a bat, and I made it myself. That sounds so exhausting. Why don't you just enjoy the features someone else designed for a change? Because I'm rich and I can afford my own network. Duh. Yeah, but the time it takes you to build all that stuff, you could have just... Okay, fine. But dude, my phone talks to me. It can remind me to do stuff, tell me where I'm at on the map. Siri is cool. It's like Jarvis and Iron Man.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Not even close.
Yeah, but I don't need a digital assistant. I have Alfred. Check it out. Alfred.
Yes, sir.
Is it going to rain today?
1 moment, sir. I'll check. Is it going to rain today?
There's no rain in the forecast for today.
No, Master Wayne, I don't believe it's going to rain today.
Thanks, Alfred. See? I don't need that phone. I got my bat phone.
Wherever you fall on the debate, Batman versus Superman, I think they both have some good merit to their arguments there. All right.
I give them both credence. I'm a Batman guy, though, through and through.
He's a cop. Superman's a fireman. Always go with the cop. All right. That'll do it for us today on the American Radicals podcast. Back with you on Tuesday, 10:30. As always, rumble.com/AmRadPod. Until then, guys, have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/AmRadPod.